Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Build Your Story Using CDC Data Tools to Shine a Light on Environmental Justice Issues in Your Community. Our presenters today are from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's National Center for Environmental Health and the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. They will be showcasing several tools, including the National Environmental Public Health Tracking Network and the Environmental Justice Dashboard. And they will be displaying how these tools can be used to visualize and demonstrate environmental injustices, including the health impacts of poor air quality, climate change, and hazardous waste contamination. My name is Victoria Bortfeld, and I am the Program Manager of Environmental Health here at APHA. I identify as a white woman using the pronouns she, her, and was raised in the dominant culture. I will be your moderator for today's webinar, and I would like to review just a few housekeeping items before we dive in. Firstly, please note that this webinar is being recorded, and this recorded video will be shared today with all those who register. For today's webinar, video, microphones, and chat are disabled for attendees, but there will be a formalized 20-minute Q&A session at the end of this webinar. To submit a question, please find the Q&A area located at the bottom of your screen. We will be monitoring this and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can during this Q&A session. Closed captioning services are provided as well as Spanish interpretation services. Please access these at the bottom of your screen as well. And lastly, there will be a survey at the end of this webinar that we would appreciate you completing. As APHA's 2019 policy statement addressing environmental justice to achieve health equity states, environmental justice communities composed of marginalized racial, ethnic, low income, rural, immigrant, indigenous, and other populations live in areas that experience disproportionate burdens from environmental exposures, damaging land uses, psychosocial stressors, and historical and structural racism, all of which can be linked to short and long-term health disparities. In addressing environmental justice, we are working towards basic human rights, the safety and well-being of communities, as well as sustainable health equity. As we work to advance environmental justice, it is essential to value and elevate the lived experiences of communities. And to amplify their environmental justice stories, we can use environmental health data to visualize and interpret communities' cumulative environmental health burdens. Environmental justice data, when it is participatory, when it is community-based, and when it is gathered, analyzed, and applied appropriately and in a culturally cognizant manner, can be extremely useful in creating a foundation for community narratives and resulting environmental justice initiatives and actions. Communities fighting for environmental justice have been collecting their own data to demonstrate their lived experiences, and the value and necessity of this community-based data collection and participatory process needs to be more comprehensively incorporated and prioritized in the environmental justice data space. As we think about using data to highlight environmental justice issues, we must also acknowledge that many of the same burdens imposed on environmental justice communities create barriers that may limit access, literacy, and usability of data and tools. And so further discussions and efforts on how to increase equitability, transparency, inclusivity, and also diversity within models of environmental justice data use and management need to be had. That being said, Environmental justice data and tools that are currently available can help to identify populations vulnerable to environmental hazards and to understand and visualize the inequities they are facing. We are seeing more and more data tools from the EPA, from the White House's Center for Environmental Quality, and from other groups, and further efforts that highlight environmental injustices and advance this work. We are hoping that today's webinar may contribute to this momentum by providing some examples of such tools offered by CDC. And now I will introduce our presenters who will discuss and demonstrate these CDC data tools that can be used to shine a light on environmental justice issues. Before doing so, I do want to acknowledge that while our conversation will center on environmental and racial justice, our panel today is not representative of or drawn from those communities most affected by environmental injustices. We are missing key voices and perspectives working to advance environmental justice, and we are committed to prioritizing Black, Latin, Native, and other voices in future convenings. Our presenters. Patrick Wall earned his BS in computer science from the University of Georgia and began his career in 1996 as the lead information technologist in CDC's radiation studies branch. In this position, he managed the group's IT resources and led scientific development projects. In 2000, he joined the CDC's Strategic National Stockpile Program as the Knowledge Management Team Leader, where he led large and small information technology development projects. In 2002, he joined the CDC's Environmental Health Tracking Branch and currently works on informatics activities related to the enhancement of the Environmental Public Health Tracking Network. Shannon DeWitt currently serves as the security steward and application development lead for CDC's National Environmental Public Health Tracking Program. Shannon graduated from Jacksonville State University with a BS in computer science. He is a Microsoft certified system engineer and has over 25 years of experience in information technology, with the last 20 years focused on public health at CDC. And now I'll hand it over to Patrick and Shannon.
Thank you so much, Victoria, for that kind introduction. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. And my colleague Shannon and I are going to share with you a little bit about the Environmental Health Tracking Network and the data that's on it and how it can be used to explore environmental justice and health equity issues. Next slide, please. So today, our presentation, I'm going to be giving an introduction to the tracking program and talk about some examples of tracking in action and resources that we have for preparedness, and also tracking, briefly go over in a broad brush, tracking and environmental justice. And then we'll get to the real meat and potatoes of the presentation, and that is a tracking network and environmental justice dashboard demonstration from Shannon. Next slide, please. So what is environmental public health tracking? Well, the Environmental Health Tracking Program was funded by Congress because of a critical knowledge gap hindering efforts to reduce or eliminate diseases that may be prevented by managing environmental factors. So where data did exist, there were often no standards or synchronization in collection. Data is often not analyzed and interpreted to inform actions. And data is never typically released to the public in many cases. So we've been working over the years with partners across states, cities, and other parts of CDC and the federal government. And our goal is to increase the number of data-driven environmental public health actions and decisions by providing information from this nationwide network of standardized, integrated health and environmental data. Next slide, please. The Environmental Public Health Tracking Program consists of CDC and a host of partners, as I mentioned, including state and local health departments, federal partners, national organizations, and many other key groups. Our 26 recipient health departments are funded to build and implement local tracking programs and data networks in their jurisdictions. They prioritize their efforts by working closely with members of local communities through technical advisory groups. Like CDC tracking, they develop data tools, applications, and products to inform public health action in their areas. To help extend tracking's reach, we also work with the Association of State and Territorial Health Officials to help unfunded health departments participate in program activities. For example, like submitting data and participating in work groups. Our partnerships are key to our success and are vital to the tracking program, and that they support our ability to build and sustain this national environmental public health tracking network, to enhance environmental public health tracking workforce and infrastructure, to disseminate information to guide policy, practice, and other actions to improve the nation's health, and also to advance environmental public health science and research, and finally, to foster collaboration among public health and environmental programs. Next slide, please. The tracking program also develops and maintains the National Environmental Public Health Tracking Network at CDC. And in just a moment, as I mentioned, Shannon will demonstrate the various components of this web-based, publicly available system that we do host at CDC. This slide highlights the different sources of environmental hazard, exposure, health effect, and population characteristic data that we currently include on the tracking network, so that people can quickly and easily access this information from one location. These topic areas are selected based on factors such as availability and applicability of the existing data. But we also work closely with our national partners at CDC, EPA, NASA, and NOAA to obtain national level data. If national level data are not available, then we work with our funded partners at the state and local levels to obtain this data. Where possible, these data are standardized so that they can be compared over time and space. Next slide, please. Tracking serves up data and information that meet different needs and inform decision-making at a local, state, and national levels. Our efforts in building the system center around the concepts of open data and providing as much context around that data as possible. Our flagship product is the Environmental Public Health Tracking Network, a web-based, multi-tiered, interoperable system of data, tools, and services. It offers unique data, like, for example, emergency department visits and hospitalizations, beautiful visualizations, interactive tools, and also the contextual and public health messaging information to go along with that. You can access our data in a variety of ways, from our Data Explorer, topic-specific dashboards, and info by location. If someone needs to use or visualize things differently, it's really no problem at all. All of tracking's data is available via an open application programming interface. This is kind of a tech term which is normally known as an API, and this API allows users to create their own applications and visualizations. You can also view state and local tracking program websites to explore data, tools, and resources that are important to their own jurisdictions and communities. You will see most of these features during the network demonstration in just a few moments. Next slide, please. So the API I mentioned, the application programming interface, is a powerful tool, but we have also focused on providing other simple ways of sharing data. Of course, there is the old school data download option, and there is also the ability to share links to save queries in Tracking's Data Explorer. But we have also recently added the ability to easily share full-featured interactive visualizations that can be embedded on any website. Next slide, please. And as you saw, there is a lot of data to access in different ways. But tracking doesn't stop with data display and dissemination. Remember, our aim is to provide the best quality data so that people can make informed decisions about public health. Tracking's expertise, data, and tools have been used to inform decisions about allocating resources, planning interventions, evaluating efforts to protect and improve the health of communities. On the tracking webpage, you can find success stories, highlights of the many faces of tracking, and tracking in action videos that detail some of the impacts of tracking around the country. Next slide, please. So at the national level, I wanted to point out just a couple of examples of tracking in action. For example, the CDC Melanoma Dashboard was created through a partnership with the CDC's Division of Cancer Prevention and Control, and it provides a wide range of relevant state and local data to help communities address their unique melanoma prevention needs. Additionally, the tracking data explores time-lapse view is an integral part of CDC's COVID data tracker and allows the public to observe rates of community transmission at the county level over time. This animated map of county-based rates of community transmission is embedded on the COVID tracker website and pops up frequently in national news clips, which really excites us. Next slide, please. Understanding a population's vulnerabilities and resources helps public health professionals identify groups at higher risk and community-specific threats or hazards. Tracking data can be used in identifying households or geographies likely to be affected by public health crises or emergencies, determining available resources within the community, and also calculating resources needed for public health response or for public safety. Next slide, please. The data sets listed here can help provide insights into characteristics of communities and population that may be protective or make them vulnerable. Our wildlife smoke tool displays locations of predicted surface smoke concentrations from wildfires that are layered on top of county and census tract level measures to access of care and social vulnerability, health status, annual air quality levels, or even population characteristics. Additionally, we have map overlays such as predicted surface smoke, current radar, transportation noise, and also live Atlantic cyclone cones provided by the National Weather Service. Additionally, we have 17 points of interest. Some examples of these include landfill facilities, nursing homes, parks, power plants, public schools, runways, and Superfund sites. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, CDC funds 26 state and local health departments to develop their own tracking networks, which feed into this national tracking network. Several of these tracking programs are working closely with their environmental justice communities and have created tools and resources specifically for their jurisdictions. Here are just three examples from Washington, Maryland, and California, but there are several more. Shannon, when he shows you the demo in a few moments, he will show you how to get to that page so that you can find those examples of environmental justice tools that are spread across the country. Next slide, please. Tracking's dashboards bring data and important information together into one place, making it more accessible for all users. Our environmental justice dashboard features data and information on environmental exposures, community characteristics, and health burden, factors important to understanding and addressing environmental justice issues. In addition, the dashboard can help identify barriers like limited vehicle access, for example, that make households more vulnerable during an emergency. Additionally, we have developed a dashboard called the CDC Heat and Health Tracker, and this provides local heat and health information. Communities can use this dashboard to better prepare for and respond to extreme heat events. And finally, although not directly related to environmental justice, I did want to point out that we have recently developed a tool that enables emergency planners to assess current capacity, potential bottlenecks, and additional resource needs to plan for population monitoring after a radiation emergency. Next slide, please. So now that you've heard some broad brush information about the tracking network, let's take a tour. I'd like to hand things over to my colleague, Shannon DeWitt, who will demonstrate some of the things I've mentioned and also more things that I didn't mention. So Shannon, I'll hand it to you.
Great, thanks. Give me 1 second here to transition my screen. And just confirm y'all can see that.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, thank you so much, Patrick. Wonderful. So I'm Shannon DeWitt, and I'm responsible for a lot of the development work that takes place in the tracking network. And I'm honored today to be with y'all and to be able to show you some of the tools and features that we have available on the tracking network. I'm going to be showing off two websites, our EPH tracking website and our CDC page referencing tracking. Our colleague Jenna is also going to be in the chat. She'll drop these links for you in the chat so you can reference these yourself, either during this call or after. And with that said, what I want to do is go ahead and show you our EPH tracking landing page. So this landing page is the site that would list all of our available tools that Patrick mentioned and the ones I'll be demoing today. So our Data Explorer is right here. That's our tool I'll be doing the majority of our work on. But those dashboards that Patrick mentioned, the EJ dashboard, the heat tracker dashboard, and two more are listed under our dashboard page. All of these are available here, along with very technical links to things like our API documentation, metadata searching, and additional resources. From here, though, you can also journey to our CDC landing page, and I'll just click About Tracking, which will take me there. So this CDC page has a lot more information about all of our tracking topics and information of the data that we provide on the tracking network. Patrick mentioned some additional environmental justice resources. So I'll jump to our tracking topics and just kind of show you these. So you get a list of all those content areas that Patrick listed on that content slide. So you can see all those listed here. And right in the middle of these is that environmental justice area. And when I click on that, you do get some information about what data we may have on environmental justice. And after you scroll down, you can see additional information, including some efforts from other tracking providers in states across the country: California, Colorado, Maryland, Massachusetts, Oregon, and Washington. Some of those were the pictures featured in Patrick's slide earlier. These will take you to each of their links for those different sections and provide additional information about their efforts on environmental justice and what their local and state tracking programs are doing in the efforts of EJ. So that being said, what I want to do is go ahead and jump back now to our previous site and dig into some of the things that I'm here to show, and that's the data. So let me jump back here to our landing page. So as Patrick mentioned, environmental health tracking data is built on an application program interface, and all of the tools and features you see today are grabbing data from that same API. And that API is an open data source, meaning anyone can connect to this data either through the tools we provide or directly to that API and grab any of the data that I'm showing today to be able to be used as a visualization tool in a PowerPoint, in a presentation, or in your own application if you have people that would be able to interface with the data that's coming back. And I'll show you where that's at when we get into the demo. Our primary data explorer, our primary tool for collecting and looking at data and visualizing the data is our Data Explorer. So I want to show you that. It's right here on the home page. It says Data Explorer tool. And as it loads, I'll give you a quick little background. This tool is built in HTML5. It should be available in any platform and any browser, except for older browsers. You should be able to query any of our data that we have available and create tables, charts, maps, and a lot of customization around that. And then I'll actually show you how to share that data with colleagues, or actually take that data and place that data into a presentation, or take that data and embed it into your website. So a lot of options here. Okay, so it's loaded, and the first thing you'll know, it drops at what we call a query panel. And the query panel allows us to find the data that we're trying to show. Well, tracking has over 650 measures of data out there, and every one of those have multiple options and multiple years and multiple advanced options. So to be able to find the data is very important. And if I put up a list of 600 measures here, it would be overwhelming. So what we did is broke that data into what we call content, indicators, and measures. And so the very first step asks, what content are we looking for? Okay, so I simply pull this list down and I get a list of all these content areas that are available. So let's start with something really simple. I'll pick something under populations and vulnerabilities. You'll notice I'll get a little spin and I'll get a list of indicators. And these indicators narrow down that population and vulnerability content area that I chose. So from here, I'll go ahead and pick demographics. So now we're narrowing down the area even further into just demographic data. And then finally, I'll get a list of measures. And this drop down here could have 2 measures. It could have 25 measures, just depending on the content area that I'm in. And so from here, I can choose a wide range of options. I'll go ahead and just say, give me a number of people by demographic group, okay? Step two is our geographic types. We have 9 of these, I believe, in the system. These can range from as much as state, national by state. So we're getting counts at a state level. They could be county, census tract, sub-census tract. They could be regions such as HHS regions. There's a lot of different geographic type options that are out there, and they vary from measure to measure. Not everything's going to have the same geographic types. In fact, some measures only have a single geographic type. So if you're running a query here and we see it skip geography, there's only one and it shows that option for you. So since it didn't do that, we've got some options. So I'm going to go ahead and click the down arrow and I'm getting national by state, national by county, state by county, state by census tract, and then what we call our 5K and 20K, and those are small areas. So we're looking at sub census tract or combined census tract, and some may be broken even further. So that's our 5K and 20K. Once again, all of these options are not available for every measure. I'll go ahead and pick a state by county. And then the list of available states come up. Some data sets are entirely complete. We'll have data for every single county in the nation. Some data sets may be limited due to data collection or data providing, or they may be only our grantee states, so the people that receive funding to submit data. It just depends on the data set. Since this data comes from census, this data is complete. So we'll just go ahead and pick on a single state. I'll choose Florida in this case. Next is time. Time could be a single year, as you see here, where we have a selection of years. It could be a week, a day, 5-year ranges, 10-year ranges. It could be a wide variety of different time selections. In this case, it's year. And what I'll do is I'll just pick all years and it'll pre-check everything. Finally, our advanced options. Advanced options may or may not be available for the particular measure you've chosen. And when it is available, there definitely can be different from measure to measure. Since we're looking at a demographic measure, we're going to get things like age groups and sex and race ethnicity. So if we want to narrow down what we're selecting from in here, we could simply say, okay, I really need to break some of this race information out. So I'm going to select a few different races I'm interested in. And once I make that selection, I'm done and I'm ready to click go. And the moment I click go, it's actually going to reach back to that API, grab the data and bring it back for visualization. So I'm going to click that. And what's happening is that data is now downloading into your browser. And the first thing it always shows is a map. We spend a lot of time looking at data, and the best way to visualize data we always feel is a map. And so that's the very first thing you're going to see. It's not the only thing, but it's the very first thing. So here's our map, and you'll notice we have a legend with the map, and the legend is broken into these 5 areas, and these are quantiles based on the data, based across all the years of data. So this is the best legend for all the years and all the advanced options we could have selected. If we'd selected just a single year, your legend may look different because it's building that legend across the data that you've selected. Now the map is interactive, meaning I can hover over any of these particular counties and get count information. So you're seeing I'm looking at number of people by demographic group, and I've happened to have the default, which was the first one in the list, white including Hispanic, and I'm seeing these numbers. But if I want to look at Black including Hispanic, I can choose that and notice the map changed. Not the legend, the map, and my numbers changed with it. So I'm getting this new map that's looking at Black including Hispanic. Or I could change the year. So from here, I can say, I really want to look at 2010. And then you'll notice the map if there's anything dramatic, would have changed. Sometimes things barely change. The numbers may change underneath and the hovers would change. All of this is available here in the map interface, along with the legend. Now, if I'm only looking for those high numbers, I can do things like turn off colors, and then only the counties that have the higher numbers are important. Might be extremely useful if I'm looking at a rate and looking for higher rate areas, or I'm in census tracts where everything's a little bit smaller. Only highlighting those high numbers or low numbers may be useful on the map so you can see it clearer. The map has a lot of other features. I can drag the map and move it around. I can zoom or pan the map. I could look for key places. So for instance, I could search for, I'm in Florida. I could search for Disney World and it would put a pin on the map just to show me where that is in Florida. So it makes it very easy to pinpoint things on the map. The map has a ton of other options. All of these are available through the hamburger menu up here at the top. So if I click on that, I get these additional icons. The first icon is specific to map options. The second is specific to legend options. So if I want to adjust legends, we'll do this first. I could change a number of break groups. Let's say I wanted 7 break groups, or I want it in fixed intervals or equal intervals, or I want to change the colors that I'm looking at. So if I change any of these, then you're going to notice as I'm changing them, the map's being refreshed and the new colors are all appearing on the map. And if I change things like number of break groups, it'll go and rebuild a new break group legend and it'll place that on the map as well. Next, I want to go ahead and show you what the the legend, or excuse me, not the legend, the map options are going to do here. So I'm going to pick map options. The map options are where those things that Patrick spoke about earlier. There's our 7 break groups, such as points of interest, or background layers, or overlay layers. So this is where I can turn off very useful information about the map. For instance, maybe it's important not only to look at Black, including Hispanic, but maybe it's important to know what would go well with that is important to note. So I could pick things like fire stations, colleges, parks, power plants, or maybe Superfund sites is something that might be interested to look at here. So if I pick that, you'll notice these dots appear on the map. Well, those dots are a representation of all the Superfund sites that are available. We actually reach out to another provider to provide these, and as they're added or changed, and this is true for all the points of interest, we always have the latest of any of these points of interest. And not only do they show on the map, but the dot is clickable. So if I single click that dot, it'll actually tell me what this Superfund site is, and it'll even provide a link to EPA's facility report. So if I click on that, it'll take me directly to EPA's facility report regarding the Superfund site, so I can get additional information about what this site is. So maybe understanding where certain points of interest are, or certain points of interest or groups have some bearing on the underlying data. The Data Explorer is not here to actually show correlation. It's here to give you a visual tool to actually dig into the data and make some sense of what you're looking at and give you a reference point to dig deeper into the data. Now, there's points of interest, but we could also turn on at the same time additional options. So let me go ahead over here and look at overlay layers. Overlay layers allow me to turn on the things like surface smoke, current radar, transportation noise, or active cyclones. So we'll turn on transportation noise. This data source actually looks at noise pollution. And so there's a secondary legend here that shows where that noise pollution is. And so if I'm really putting correlations together, I can start to say, okay, major metropolitan area, I'm getting a lot of Superfunds. There's a lot of noise pollution, either because of roads or airports or both. And so maybe this is interesting to see all 3 of these data points on the map at the exact same time. And of course, I can show that here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and turn these points of interest off and show you a couple of other options that are available here at the map level. So let me turn both of these off for now, just so we have a cleaner picture. So you remember I selected all these years of data. I think it was 19, 20 years of data here. So maybe it's important to see how things change over time. Well, we can do that. We can actually set this map into motion, and we do that simply by pressing this play button to the left of the year. This is a timeline mode for the map, and what it does is it goes out and it grabs all the years of data, and as soon as it completes that, then it starts a play button, much like you would see in a television show where the data is actually changing over time. And if you pay close attention, you're going to notice the legend's not changing here, but the colors on the map are slowly changing as the numbers underneath are changing. And if I hover over one particular county, you'll notice that it's also changing my hover to show those counts changing in that measure. This feature is available as long as you have more than one single item of time available in your query. Now, it's a really neat animation. Okay, so we're going to take a step sideways and say, what can I do with this animation? Sure, I can see it on the screen, but we can actually take it a step further. Let's say that that timeline mode is something you actually want to show in a presentation, or you want to be able to show on your website. Well, we have tools available for that while we're here at the map. This image export button up here says export embed, allows us to click and show a JPEG, a PNG, or an animated GIF. So I'm going to start with a JPEG, really simple. All it's doing is it's creating a picture that I now can embed into a PowerPoint or save on a website. So that's that same picture of Florida, same colors I've selected, same 7 things in the legend with some details about what we've selected, such as Black including Hispanic and the year we chose. And now that JPEG is ready to be inserted into a map or into a PowerPoint, into anything really. Now, since we made an animated map, we also can do that. So I can say, make an animated GIF, and it'll actually takes a second longer, but it actually exports a GIF that is then able to be input on a website that's animated. So it would move just like pushing the play button did on the screen. And when this finishes, you'll actually see it export that animated GIF, and that GIF is ready to be placed onto your website. And while that's doing that, I know a lot of people are already saying, well, he's been playing on the left-hand side of the screen this entire time. What are we using the right-hand side for? Well, the Data Explorer is unique. It actually customizes made for the screen that it's on. So if you were to load the Tracking Network's data website onto a phone or to a smaller device screen, such as a tablet, you may only see one screen. But on a normal desktop, you actually get a whole second window. And this allows us to do more data analysis because that second screen can show something entirely different, or it could show the same map for a different year. Maybe we're looking at a cause and effect thing where something from the previous year is causing the next year. And we'll look at some examples of that in a second. So that's what that second screen's used for. And I will actually show it in motion here. I can actually take a query on the left side and simply use these icons in the middle to copy the query over to the right-hand side screen. So you're going to notice that that Florida map reappears on the right-hand side. And you're like, well, you're looking at the same thing on both sides. You're right, but I can actually change it and say, well, show me 2009 on one side and 2015 on the other. So I'm looking at the same data or the same query, but 2 different years of data. And so now that third icon in the hamburger menu allows me to link the maps, meaning now as I move map on the left, the one on the right moves. And as I hover on the left, I get hovers on both sides. So I truly can compare numbers left to right, whether they're the same data set or different, and be able to compare those things side by side. And there's that animated GIF that downloaded. So you can actually use this animated GIF and you see it's moving on its own, colors are changing, and as it does, the year's changing here. So that could go directly onto a web page. Go ahead and close that. So all kinds of great features packed into the map. We're not done with map, but I wanted to show you some things. And I also want to show you what we can do with some other features here, and we'll come back to map. So we have this wonderful map. What else can we build? Well, the icons up here at the top, which I haven't really went through yet, have a lot of power. Remember, we start with map. These gray icons on the right are our visualization tools. So map, charts, and finally tables. So let's jump to charts. So our charting component allows us to do a lot of things as well. So I can do things like sort the data, largest to smallest. I can zoom in to just the high areas. So if this is something we're looking at, we want to see what just the higher numbers are, I can pull that up here, right? I can reverse sort it. I can even change the chart type. So maybe I don't want a bar chart. I want a clustered bar chart or trend chart, depending on what I'm looking at. I can make a decision here to say, I want to really look at Baker County, and I want to look at it over all the years I've selected, and I want to look at it by a single advanced option. Let's choose Black, including Hispanic. I can preview it here, and it'll show me a preview of that chart or apply it. And so now, even though we're in the same data, I've chosen a single county, and I'm looking at that county numbers change over time. So maybe this is particulate matter over time. Maybe this is, any of the data sets that we provide, and we're looking at it over time. So that's our charting function, and just showing you a quick way to change the charts. Lots of chart options. Finally, here we have our table. The table takes all the data that we've queried, remember, we queried 4 advanced options. So in the year 2015, there's going to be 4 entries for every county, 1 for each of the advanced options. But from here, we can do all kinds of fun stuff. We can sort based on counts. We could say, okay, I want to filter based on certain things. So I can open columns here. I can add things like the FIPS code. So now we have the FIPS code in the data, show that. We can add, each of these boxes up here has a filter option. So I could come to this and I could say filter and only show me this number if it's greater than 10,000. And all of a sudden you see the column change because now nothing is less than 10,000. Even the table has additional features. So I could actually take this and say, I want to grab this data and then right click and say, I want to create a chart, a bar chart. And it actually can create an embedded chart right here, right on the table based on the data I've selected. And then in this chart, I can actually download this image. And so now I've got the image I just made in my bar chart, or the bar chart I just made in the table directly out of the browser. So it gives you all these powers to create all kinds of different visualizations right inside the data and bring them out for use. We can even do fancy things like looking at totals. So I could say, I want to get, it makes no sense here, but I actually could take and say, I want county value totals. And so I drag this into the row groups and then into the totals, and I can get, notice it broke each of these by each just the county, and I could get totals for each of these. So there's all kinds of power within the table tool as well. Let's jump back to the map again. So let's say that we actually want to create a new measure. So I'm going to go back to select data. Okay. And it's going to recreate the measure I just ran because maybe it's thinking I want to just adjust this measure, change the years, change the advanced options, but I don't. I want to run a new measure and I don't know what I'm looking for. Let's say I know that I want to look at, let's pick something new. Let's say I want to look at asthma. So I can actually start looking to see if I can find asthma, but we have a search tool up here that allows me to put in keywords. So let's say I'm actually wanting to look for asthma. And you notice as I'm typing the word asthma, it's narrowing down all the measures that are related to asthma. So I'm going to put in asthma, and here's this list of measures that we have available for asthma. So I can say, well, show me the number of hospitalizations for asthma. And it pre-fills all the first 3 boxes and stops at geography. So I'll say now I want national by state. Oh, not national by state. State by county. We'll stick with Florida for a minute. We'll pick all of our years. No advanced options in this query, and I'll hit go. Now we've got a whole new map on the left that's related to asthma, but remember we had that link on, so we've still got links between the two. 27 case counts of hospitalizations for asthma for whatever I've queried here, and then you've got your comparison over on the right. So you can actually look between the two to see what you're actually looking for. And if this map is something that's important and you want to actually embed it on your website, you can do that. So that export option that creates the JPEG, the PNG, the animated GIF has one more option that I didn't go over, and that's the data visualization embedding. This data visualization embedding, or what we call the DVE, actually provides a very simple set of HTML code that you can place on your website anywhere, and it'll recreate this map for you. It's also available in our charts and our tables. So if I click on DVE, it'll actually give me a preview here by saying preview of what I'm going to be building. And it'll show you exactly what it's going to look like over here. Yep, there it is. So on my website, I now get to choose what's going to be included in my embed. So maybe even though it's important to know this is for number of hospitalizations, maybe I just need to uncheck that because I'm putting that in the title above the map. And maybe I want to disable the scroll. There's all kinds of options here. Maybe I want it to always grab the 10 most recent years instead of actually forcing the years I've picked. And that way, if we include new data, the most recent year of data actually shows. Maybe I want to turn on a point of interest. So this is asthma. So maybe it's important to turn on hospital point of interest when it's embedded. So I'll make those choices here. Okay, and I'll go ahead and say preview, and it'll show again what it's going to look like. And the preview is just to help me take a look at what it may look like on my website. So I'm going to go ahead and preview it. So there it is. right? With all those hospitals embedded on there. And I can choose what size embed I want: small, medium, large, full size, custom. So this is where you set the height and width. I'll go ahead and just pick medium, and I will notice that down here is the actual code, that the only thing, that one little line of code that you need to embed this on your website. So I'll click copy. And when I do that, it'll tell me I'm copied. And just as an example, I'm going to open this HTML editor, and I'm going to paste that code right here in the source. So I'm going to say, this is a test. This is my website. Asthma map below. Okay. So I'm putting this in, and then right below that, I'm going to paste that little bit of code that I just showed you. And then what's going to happen is, this is a real web page here. You'll notice when that web page loads, it's automatically going to have our little loading screen while it grabs the data. And the map I just built in the Data Explorer will be displayed inside the web page with those points of interest turned on, just like I asked for it to, right? And this embedded map is fully functional. I can click on, oops, didn't mean to, I'm in the editors. I can click on zoom. I can hover over or single click any of those points of interest. So let me zoom here in some so you can kind of see that working. Yep. And I can move that over and then click on one of these points of interest. And so there's Orlando Health South Lake Hospital and all the information about the hospital, including the number of beds, and if there's a trauma center, and if they have a helicopter pad. All the data that we're bringing in is available on this embed that would live on another website. Really cool feature, super easy to take any of the data we have and place that on another website. Jump back to our map real quick. Let me go ahead and just clear out everything. I'm going to show you one more cool feature in here. So let's do another search again. We're actually going to search one more time. And let's say this time we're actually looking for, let's see, anything about hospitalizations. So maybe number of hospital beds might be important. So I could pick something like this. Once again, it'll pre-fill all the information. Geography type, I can pick, once again, state by county. And I am going to stick with Florida only because I want to show you something really interesting. Obviously, Florida has a lot of coastlines. And so maybe we're looking at something that's related to the water, and we're wanting to actually get an idea about how much reach a hurricane may have, especially if we're looking at something like environmental justice. What would it mean if we had a hurricane hit an impoverished area, and what kind of coverage would we have around that area? So if I'm thinking the hurricane is heading in here to the Gulf, I can actually right click on the map. And one of the options I have here is the buffer tool. And the buffer tool allows me to actually set a buffer around a particular area here. So I'm going to say, show me 25-mile buffer, and include in that 25-mile buffer hospitals. And so if there's a hospital within that 25-mile buffer, it'll actually show the points of interest of the hospital. So if I'm really trying to look at what points of interest may be in a particular area, and it doesn't necessarily have to be on the water like this. It could be an impoverished area, and we're looking at what resources may be within that. Turning on this buffer actually shows me true 25-mile circle from the center point of that buffer, and actually shows me what points of interest may be within that area. And so in this case, we have 2 hospitals. I can click on them, get more information just like before. But I also have another right click option here where I can remove the buffer, or I could place the buffer in another spot by simply saying buffer tool again. And so I'll remove this buffer for now, and at least those points of interest on. Also, I've got some other right click options. I can actually open info by location, which is another tool we have, and I'll show that in a minute. Or if EPA's EJ screen is something I'm also using to dig more into environmental justice, I can actually right click on any county in the United States and say explore EPA's EJ screen. And that information for that county, which is Taylor, Florida, opens directly on our screen, taking you to EJ Screens tool on EJ Screens website. And here we are looking at Taylor, Florida. These same right-click tools are available in that embed I showed earlier. So they're available even if it's embedded onto another website. Great. And then I will show it just because I mentioned it, our info by location tool. This is another tool from tracking that uses tracking data that's built off our own application program interface. So it opens some information about Taylor County, Florida, and looks at things like the race breakdown, sex, average household income, residents who live below the poverty line, and it takes all this information and data directly from the tracking data sets. And within each of these areas, I can discover the data or learn more about. Learn more about takes you to topics where discover the data, and I'll go ahead and open one of these, opens our data explorer directly to that data set, so you can get more information about data. So it's opening the number of people of demographic group, which is the one I queried earlier. But all those particular data sets are there. So asthma, air quality, and it does this a little bit different. It shows it as infographics because the data explorer, although it's very powerful, sometimes looking at a table chart and map may be confusing. But if I put it into English and I give some context and an infographic, maybe this makes more sense. And so this tool, this info by location, was built to be able to show somebody who may not be as technical some of the information about the area that they live in. Now, let's go ahead and jump back one more time to the Data Explorer and leave it open. But I'm also going to open up one of our dashboards. So Patrick mentioned that we've created these dashboards. And I have this option here for viewing dashboards, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and click our dashboard list, and it'll show you the dashboards that we have. Our very first dashboard was our heat and health tracker. And if we have a minute, I may show that. Definitely are going to be showing our environmental justice dashboard. But just so you're aware, we also have the melanoma dashboard, which Patrick mentioned, which is specifically about melanoma cancer and sun and the risk involved with that. And then we have a tool called CDC Simpler that we worked with our radiation group on. A little bit different. It's more of a tool than a dashboard, but it is considered one of our dashboard products. I'm going to go up here and go ahead and click on Environmental Justice Dashboard. The Environmental Justice Dashboard launched a little over a year ago, and it was our first attempt at pulling data from the tracking network related to environmental justice issues. And so it is our first draft of this dashboard. We're currently working on version 2, which will bring in more data, change the look and feel a little bit, start to look at additional sets that are out there, and pave the way for the future of this dashboard. The dashboard is designed to look and present data on the homepage that is national information. For instance, when it loads, you'll see things like the number of Superfund sites and the number of people live in counties with unhealthy levels of PM 2.5. So you get this interesting look at a national level, right? 52.6 of US homes were built before 1980. Plus, in addition to that, you get things like a map with the social vulnerability index, minority population information, and media and income. And if you notice, these maps and these pictures I'm showing look a lot like our Data Explorer. It's because the same tools I showed you that feed our DVEs or those embeds that you can do, feed this. And all of this data is coming directly from the tracking network and those APIs. And along with that, any map actually brings over some of the points of interest, the ones that we thought were useful for environmental justice and placed here to be able to be part of the environmental justice dashboard. So now at the top up here, we actually allow you to dig deeper by picking a county. So I'm going to go ahead and pick 90210, which we know is in LA. That's California, Los Angeles County, because it's a very interesting county and we can actually dig a little deeper. And you notice once I ran that, we opened up a little bit more of options over here on the left. We opened up environmental exposures, community characteristics, and health burden. Each of those giving deeper insight into environmental justice in those particular topic areas. So you'll notice at the top, it moved us immediately into environmental exposures, our first section, but we are looking at Los Angeles, California, showing us where Los Angeles is for those who might not know, and then starts looking at all these different numbers here. Percent of impervious surfaces, seniors living alone, percent of adults 18 plus that reporting having current asthma. All of this data, once again, being fed directly from our API. We also have additional maps here. The maps include particulate matter, ozone, heat, precipitation, and flooding, all environmental related issues, but all definitely falling into important environmental justice concerns. And those same points of interest that we had on the other map is available here as well. Now, within all of our dashboards, things like maps, they they're fully functional, meaning I can hover over anything here, but I can also go full screen with any of our maps. So if I go into full screen mode, I get this much bigger picture of the map, and my hovers are easier to read, and I can see any points of interest I would have turned on a little bit clearer. So this mode allows us to see the map, and then just hitting escape or the close button gets us back into our dashboard. Community characteristics, dive into the characteristics, and you may notice these spinning circles. This is simply our dashboard reaching back to our API to grab the data that we're wanting to show. And not only does it show up in infographics and in maps and in charts, but even this block of text. In Los Angeles, 475,000 of households do not have access to the internet. You notice this block of text, these numbers are being pre-filled from the API. So it's reaching back to a measure we have in the Data Explorer about internet access and bringing those numbers into the dashboard. And once again, additional maps showing stuff here related to community characteristics, low income, low food access, all measures related to EJ that are on the environmental justice area and within Tracking's Data Explorer. Finally, over here on the left, we have health burden, which is our last area with content here. Once again, same type of things where we have these nice infographics, some text around what these mean, and showing some maps and information about that. And then lastly, the last two about the data and resource refer to all the data that we've used from tracking and where that data came from, the original data source, and it drives you to be able to dig deeper into this data and look at the data yourself. And then resources are additional environmental justice resources and some glossary terms that make sense if EJ is a new topic for you. So some wonderful information here, a wonderful look at some of the EJ inspired data sets that we have on tracking by using this as a starting point. We've also tried to collect some of these key measures, not all of them, but some of them, and place them actually into a new content indicator on our site. So if you go back to our Data Explorer, you can actually choose environmental justice from our drop-down menu. And these are just additional measures that have been pulled out to our Data Explorer so that you can find those. So under environmental justice, let's go ahead and look at that internet access. So I'll pick internet access, percent of households with no internet access. I'll choose national by county. It'll bring back all counties. I'll choose 2014 to 2015, no advanced options, and I'll hit go. And so it's generating that map again of all the national national by county of households with no internet access. And so let's say you want to use this data, not just as an image, but you want to download this data and be able to manipulate the data on your own or show the data in correlation with other data you may have in a presentation or a school report, then it's super easy to do that as well. Just like I showed you to be able to download the map, we have two additional icons, which I want to show now. One of them is being able to download this data, and that's this icon, export. So when I click on export, everything that you've queried, okay, everything you've queried actually will come down as a zip file. And that zip file not only includes a CSV with the data in it, and if I click this, we'll see it'll open in Excel. There's the data, shows the FIPS code, the county, the start year, the end year, the value. So all that comes down, but also what comes down is what we call footnotes. And so the footnotes is actually our about data. Our about data here tells everything about the data. When I click this, I'm going to get where the data came from. The data was provided by the US Census in our 5-year estimates, the American Community Survey or ACS data. If this data came from any of our data partners, NOAA, NASA, EPA, that would actually say that in that very first footnote. All the rest of the footnotes contain additional information that we think are important for you to know, whether that be why the data is not complete, or maybe it's because a certain state is missing from the data and why that's that way. Additional columns here let you know why there might be differences in the data between our data and data provided at a state website. It talks about things such as the indicator and data link, and that'll actually take you into more information about the data. And so if you look here, you'll actually see all the measures that are listed under internet access and what they mean and where the data came from and the rationale and how it's to be used and the limitations of it. Very useful information if you want to dig deeper into the data, right? Now, all this information also comes down in that download. So it's available on the download level. And then finally, under that, we have all these other sections of how should this data be cited. So if I'm going to actually reference this data in a report or a manuscript or a paper, how do I cite the data? Why was the data set created? How was the data set created? How can I get a copy of the data? What are the limitations of the data? All those questions get answered under About Data. And then the last icon up here, which I think is important, is actually our Share icon. Share has two separate, totally different options. One of those is I want to share this data with a colleague, meaning I actually want to give this data to someone, or this link, so they can look at what I'm looking at. So this first one, if I copy that, you to share your query, use this, and I open up another page and I paste that in, or I drop it in an email and someone else clicks on it, all that's going to do is it's going to reopen the query that we ran, run the same selection, and provide the same map that I made. And that, actually, that's the one I made from when I had the boundary on. So you see it there. There's the boundary. But if the boundary was off, that wouldn't have happened. And then, sorry about that. The second link here is actually a link to the application program interface. So if you're someone who wants to dig more into the data, you want to create an application that consumes this data, you're messing with Microsoft BI or another similar tool that would consume this data and make your own visualization using this data. I've now queried the percent of households with no internet. This API call is going to bring back that exact data in a JSON format. So you don't even have to figure out how to write your own API calls. It builds it for you. And then you could copy this and paste that into your code or your application to consume the data through tracking. We also, so this is available for free, anyone can do that. If you're going to be consuming a lot of data, we ask that you ask for an API key, which would open it up just a little bit more, making it quicker, and not throttle the amount of times you can ask for data. But that's a pretty high number. So if you're only grabbing a little data, you don't need that. If you're grabbing more, just asking that you reach out and look at collecting one of those API keys from us to make it easier. So one more dashboard real quick, and then if you have any questions, just remember while I'm doing this, you can drop those in the Q&A, and then we're also going to open up questions after I'm done. But I'm going to jump back and show you one more dashboard. So let's go under dashboards. I showed you the EJ dashboard. I want to now jump to the heat and health tracker. Now, heat and health tracker was developed summer before last. We're actually about to be doing some additional updates to it. Since it's not summer, it's not quite as exciting to see. When we start getting to the heat of the summer, there's a lot more going on here because the temps are starting to rise. But what I can show you what's here now and actually show you what happens in the summer as the temps rise. So here we are, it drops you at the current heat for today. So if you lived in Texas, you can start to see you're getting into those 80s and upper 90s. This is the temp actually for today, March 28th. We can look at projections for tomorrow and day after tomorrow. So I'm going to jump to the 30th. Cooled off a little bit, Texas. So it's a little bit cooler on Wednesday for you. Right? Just comparing that to the legend here. We can also look at the minimum temperatures, how cold it's going to be at night. So in the summers, obviously we see a lot more red. In the winters, we see those blues and purples in the north of the country here. We also have monthly forecasts, so we can look at what April is going to look like. So we're here in March, and it's going to show you a picture of what April is going to look like with the number of days, expected number of days in the next month at a dangerous level of heat. So once again, early in the summer, so we're not going to see much of that, but you definitely see a lot more of this as we move into June and July and August. And finally, the tab up here that we really are is very new and we really are enjoying is this new heat-related illness. This actually takes a look at weeks in the summer where we have heat-related illness and compares it to temperature, and it's broken up by HHS regions. So the underlying chloropeth colors, and I'm looking back at the end of summer from last summer. Let's actually go back to some hot months. Let's go back to July. The underlying chloropeth is actually showing you the temperature ranges for the week. And so it gives you a temperature. And then those circles are the rate of emergency department visits for those HHS regions. So you're expecting when you have those high temps that you've got much higher emergency department visits in those areas, and it seems to correlate. We're actually hoping to bring online for this summer, not just weekly numbers, but daily numbers. So you'll look at daily temps in correlation with daily emergency department visits. And so that's hopefully going online this before summer hits this year. This same heat and health tracker provides additional information, but it also, much like the other one, allows us to dig deeper into the data. So if I pick a different zip code up here, I'll pick somewhere in Georgia. Then the second page actually shows you today's high for Georgia, which is going to be 66 for this county, Gwinnett County. It shows you the number of days we've been over 90 since January 1st of this year. Of course, not been that hot yet, so we're not seeing any numbers. And then starting in what we consider summer months, which is May 1st, you'll watch a trend line appear down here. So this blue section is actually historical temps average over the years. And then there'll be a red line that shows trending current temps through the summer. So you can kind of get an idea of how the current temp is relating with trends over time historically for that data. In addition, there's additional maps down here showing exposures, number of days over 90 degrees, looks at demographic information, community characteristics such as number of land used for development, because all of that plays into heat and how that works. And then finally, just some basic population characteristic information in regards to Gwinnett County, the percent of the population that's a minority in Gwinnett County, the percentage of population without health insurance in Gwinnett County. So it allows you to get the percentage of population with limited English speaking in Gwinnett County. So all of these numbers down here are related to whatever you queried. In this case, I picked Gwinnett County. So this whole image here is a picture of heat, in particular with Gwinnett County, and how that additional information affects that. And all of these measures, once again, are available through the tracking network. And if we go to About Data, we can see which measures we actually query. And so it gives you a little bit more information about where the data comes and to know what kind of indicator and measure name it is. And so now that we know the measure name, we could actually go back to Tracking Network here and search for those individual measures on the Data Explorer using the search tool. Okay. The only last thing I didn't talk about, and I just want to mention, is that it's here. If you're interested in the tracking network and you're trying to figure out tools here, there is a brief help section. That's the question mark that kind of helps you along answering what some of the icons are that I've shown today on the Data Explorer. And obviously this is not hugely in depth. There's a lot of information here. And at the end of the presentation, I'll be showing our tracking support email, but you see it here, tracking support, and we'll flash that on the screen so that we can, even after the fact, be able to answer any questions you may have in regards to anything I've talked about today. So with that, I want to go ahead and swap back over to what we're going to have for our Q&A. Our Q&A will allow you to answer any questions related to what we've been showing here. It'll also allow me to open back up the Data Explorer and show anything that may come from those questions.
Great. Great. Yes. Thank you so much, both Patrick and Shannon, for walking us through those various data tools and for being here today. And so now we'll move on to the Q&A portion. We're allotting about 20 minutes for this. And thank you all for submitting questions. We've had some real live time answers in the Q&A portion, and we will try to get to as many questions possible as we can during this time. So a first question I'll ask will be about funding, and then we can get to more of the data-based questions that are there. So I do want to mention that the funding opportunity for tracking funding is available now and live. If Jenna or Kate, you could link that, drop that link in the chat again, that would be great. And then a follow-up question to that is, who is eligible to receive funding from CDC to upload their health data to CDC for this tool?
Patrick, would you like to take that?
Yeah, I got it. So thank you for that question. Let's see, as far as eligibility is concerned, almost all jurisdictions are eligible to apply. However, you don't necessarily have to be funded by CDC for tracking to participate and partner with us. In fact, we've had several states, North Carolina and Tennessee come to mind, who have contributed to tracking with being an unfunded partner. So that's always an option.
Great, thank you. We've received a lot of questions about the data, obviously. And so just a general question, how did you choose which data to include in these tools?
Yeah, great question. I'll take that one as well. There's a lot of sort of criteria that go into choosing which data. We ask ourselves questions like, how's the data quality? What's its coverage? What's public health question is it helping to answer? Is a really important one. Things like is it available at a low enough geographic level? And also, how many years are available? What's its time period? Our goal is to not just provide a snapshot of data, but as you can see, we're really intent on trying to provide some time-based qualities to the data as well.
Great. And you touched on this a little bit, but maybe some further elaboration and reiteration. How can someone download the raw data for further analysis? And then off of that, how can someone save that animated feature you showed of the data, for example?
Sure, I'll take that. So any data that you query on the Data Explorer is able to be downloaded via the download or export icon here. So if I were to query a measure, and this is the one I had up a minute ago with all these years of data, and I click the download, I will actually get a zip including all those years of data, all the advanced options, everything that I've queried would come down, and there it is as a download file. And that CSV is ready to be opened inside Excel or your favorite data analyst tool that you may be using. So that's the data download section, no problem there. As far as the animated GIF goes, any map that has multiple times, so in this case, I've got multiple time options here, I can simply click on the export embed and from here choose animated GIF, and it will download to your computer just like that download. Once it pulls down anything it needs, the animated GIF, which is ready to be inserted into any web page that you would need it on, or into a PowerPoint or whatever. And so it takes a second to build, especially since I had 24 years, I think it was, to build that. But once it finishes, you'll get the GIF as an export. So.
Great. And are these downloadable charts and graphs that you demonstrated high enough in resolution to be printed for marketing, for example?
It really, they're made more for screen, but we often use them in PowerPoints and presentations. It really depends on what trying to print you're doing. When you export certain items, you're required to almost double it in size to be able to use it for XYZ, print. It really depends on what you're trying to use it for. It actually gives you the height and width of the exports here. And we're down the road looking to have multiple options of these sizes, but currently this is the pixel size for height and width of the JPEG, PNG, and animated GIF that you would get on export. So really depends. If you're trying to make it a full, huge poster size, you're probably going to lose some quality with that. I have found sometimes it's easier, on a large screen to screenshot it, and then reduce down from there. We're definitely looking into more options for that.
Great. And some questions more about mapping in general and more detailed questions. So is this tool that you showed similar to GIS, or does it offer different features not included in GIS? Just wondering differences and similarities in that manner.
Sure. Data Explorer is not a GIS tool per se. The mapping component uses OpenLayers, which is a GIS map tool. And we have provided similar features, such as the boundary tool that I mentioned, that would be very similar to a geospatial type tool. With a geospatial type tool, obviously you could load your own data, et cetera, into the tool, which we don't allow here. The data we're showing inside this is currently just tracking network data. But we do provide a lot of extras around that. So a geospatial tool or GIS tool that you would select out there such as an Esri product, is just a blank canvas for you to open up, where we provide all the data here that's available to be used in conjunction with the charts and the tables. You get a more rounded picture to be able to visualize data than just the map. So all those things are a little bit different than most GIS tools, along with things like about data, where it really gives you good feedback on the data that you're actually getting from us. So a little bit different. Definitely has some similar features with a standard GIS tool.
And on that line of questioning, is there a way to obtain geometry, so latitude and longitude and map projection type when the data is downloaded?
So if you're looking at something that is like a point of interest, you would get a latitude, longitude. So we do have some points of interest data out there that would be available like that, but we don't provide like an overlay map layer or anything along those lines. The points of interest, most of them come from a free, well, it's free or federal group called HIFLD, HIFLD, that provides that, and they have options to use their overlays for points of interest. So that's if those POIs are something you're interested in, many of those are included in HIFLD data, but ours doesn't provide an ability to use us as a projection layer over another GIS product. So.
Great, thank you. I also have a question here about specifically lead data. So will there be any data added related to lead that can be mapped at all?
That's a great question. Patrick, you've been talking about that.
I'll take that. Yeah, thank you for that question. We are desperately trying to get lead data into tracking and to the EJ dashboard. And we're working really closely with the national lead program at CDC to try and make that connection. I see the follow-up on that is about lead service line information. So that's something that's actually come up recently that we were going to ask them about, but I don't have any information on that right now. The lead data that we're just going to focus on first is going to be blood level testing. But the lead service line information is a question we have as well. So thank you for asking that.
And another thing that may slow that down is the change in the blood lead level. Standard.
Reference value.
Yeah. So.
Great, thank you. And on the data and maps in general for the tracking program, are the data and maps only available for the grantee states with the program?
It depends on actually the number of measures that are only grantee states is very small as far as data submission. A lot of the data is full national coverage. There are some data sets that's missing a single state, possibly because you may have a state that won't release that data. But we do have just some measures that are simply grantee data. And so you'll know those when you open a map and you see holes in the data. Oftentimes the clarity of why those holes there are once again listed in the about data in the footnotes. So you'll see why there might be holes in the data here. It really just depends on the data set. Same for years. You may have some data that, we have data all the way up to 2021. And then some stops at 2019 because it's about a 3-year reporting lag on a certain data set. So it really is an independent story with all the different data sets that we work with, and there's a different reason each time. So just depends on the data set.
Great, thank you. And we have a question about the EJ dashboard. So will the data sets being used for the CDC's EJ dashboard be kept current with the data sets from the EJ tools developed by other governmental agencies, such as EPA and CEQ, so that there's consistency? And the example that was given was that some of the data sets, such as PM, 2.5, and ozone emissions, are older in CDC than EJ screen, for example.
Yeah, I love that question. Actually, when Shannon and I were practicing this, we were looking at that as well and going, wait, why isn't this data, this PM data more up to date? So that's something that we're going to look into. The ultimate answer, though, is we work with EPA. They provide us with that air quality data. They take the actual monitoring data and apply some very sophisticated and complicated algorithms and models that I don't pretend to understand. and they produce model data for each county for the United States. So we're hoping to get that very soon from them. We have a partnership with them to do that. The other thing is we have recently learned about EJ screens. They have their own API. And so it's possible that we're going to be able to tap into that for grabbing data from EJ screen. And so we may be able to, provide that more consistent data across the two tools once we make that connection. Great question.
You may have partly answered this just right now, but a follow-up to that is, how is your information that you presented here different from EPA's EJ Screen or other tools, for example?
So the specifically about the dashboard, I'll focus on that, the EJ dashboard. It is different from EJ Screen in that it provides much more contextual information to go along with the actual data. It tries to tell a story about how EJ can affect a community. And so it's full of, you saw those infographics and icons and plain language. So that messaging and that contextual data that's wrapped around the maps and the charts is probably the biggest difference in the two.
Great. And so are all tracking data available at the neighborhood's census tract level?
No, because there's a lot of data not collected at that neighborhood census tract level. It really just depends on the data set. Obviously, everything from census, we can go down that small and even further now. But if a data set is not available at a smaller level, we have a drive in tracking to get data all the way down as low as we can go, right? But in a lot of cases, there's just not data at that level, or the data numbers are so small, they may pose an issue to be able to be shown, because if it's below certain numbers with certain data sets, we wouldn't show those numbers. And so when it gets down to that level, then if half the country is not being shown, then maybe we need to look at, showing a higher level, in which case we would choose county or bigger. And so for those various reasons, no, not everything is down at that level.
We wish.
And it's getting better. It really is. We continue to see data sets where we can go further down. So.
Great, thanks. Just a couple more questions I think we have time for. So how do you know what the metadata is on these data?
I'm not sure the question, Patrick.
Shannon, you want to show how to just show how to see metadata?
Sure. I mean, I can show that. So two different ways. I can go to the About Data tab as we were earlier. And if you look down here, you actually have information about the data, such as indicator. The website also drives metadata. So also underneath indicator is metadata. And from here, I can actually put in anything. I'll go back to my asthma example and just say topic search, and it'll bring back this list of topics. And I can say, I want metadata from California relating to asthma for 2018. And it'll bring back the exact metadata record that California submitted for their data and all the information that comes with that. And with every data set we also have a national metadata record, which doesn't get down to the level of California. It would be, here is a record for all the data we've collected from our grantees or data we've got from national partners and what that actually means. And so any of these would also have that information as well. Notice the national level. So that national level, that's our national metadata record, and it gets into some of the details you're probably curious about in regards to the data. And this is available for every data set we have on tracking. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you. So I assume, and you've talked about, you'll be making some changes, maybe adding some more data. So what's the best way to keep up with these new additions that may come to the tracking network?
Jenna, can you pop in a link to join our newsletter into the chat as well? I will say you're right. We do new additions. 4 times a year is how often we update the tracking network. We do enhanced features and data updates quarterly, and those updates vary. Most data sets get updated every year or 2 years, depending on the data set, some more frequently. It really just depends. We do release an email newsletter that contains what's coming and what just got applied to the tracking network. And then we also do things much like what we're doing here, where we show off new features, and we always list those webinars in that newsletter as well.
Great, thank you. And I'll leave you with one last question, and that is, what's next for tracking?
I'll take that one, Shannon. So great, I love that question too. So what's next for tracking? Many of you may have heard that CDC is embarking on a data modernization effort for public health systems and data. This applies to CDC and also to really all of public health. So we are definitely participating in that effort. Right now we are looking at moving our data and systems to a cloud-based infrastructure that is being spun up in CDC. We're focusing on enhancing the data pipelines that we already have. Shannon showed a couple of those to the National Weather Service, for example, to get temperature data. We're looking at enhancing those and creating more standardized and automated pipelines so that we can reduce the manual effort of getting data into the tracking network and getting it out for folks to use and distribute. So modernization of systems and cloud-based architecture, and focusing on more, better, and more efficient data pipelines.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, with that, I would like to thank both you, Patrick and Shannon, for your informative discussion and demonstration, and thanks for everybody for coming to this webinar and participating by providing some thoughtful questions. So the recording and the slides will be available on the APHA event site later this week. And please, if you can, complete the webinar survey, which you will be directed to shortly. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and that concludes the webinar.